guys, it's Laura from Lightning Cosplay, and we are back with a project with an insane amount of details. This time we had the honor to bring characters from the story-driven action RPG The Last Oricru to life. They asked us to do the main character Silver, which just fits perfectly to my boyfriend Ralph, but if you know me, you know I love details and challenges. And then I saw the outfit of Queen Hadriana, which has an overload of details, so we also ended up doing her as well. It was a crazy amount of work in a very short time, so we teamed up with some amazing artists to finish both costumes in time for Gamescom 2022. So enough said, lean back and enjoy the crafting process. I started this project with working on my most favorite piece of the costume, the crown. First I made a mock-up for the hood. This will also be the guideline for the chainmail part. To save time, I bought a chainmail hood and modified it to get the desired shape. Unfortunately, it was impossible to find a brass or copper chainmail, so I thought, why not painting it? Since metal is hard to paint and all the rings move constantly, I tried out different paints and alcohol metallic paint turned out works best. And because you can see through the chainmail and it is not comfy to wear it directly on your head, I kind of lined it with a fabric hood inside. The crown was 3D printed with our Pure Poly Phantom Prime, which has a quite big print volume, but we still had to separate the crown in several parts. I spent some time for sanding and filling to get a nice and smooth surface, attached the bottom part of the crown to the main piece and could finally start with painting. I gave the whole crown a grayish silver base coat with my airbrush and went on by painting the rest of it by hand. We used 2mm ABS sheets to cut out the small plates for the chainmail hood. I first primed them gloss black and then used Alclad chrome to get a nice and shiny result. I attached all 60 plates with little rings to the chain hood. The last detail were the thick wheat chains, which I sewed on by hand, and then the full headpiece was done. This turned out so cool, it's definitely a statement piece and worthy to be worn by a queen. The claws were also printed with our resin printer. They have a really cool design and a lot of organic details. They were cleaned and got some layers of filler and then were primed with a gloss black to make the Alclad chrome color super shiny. The claw pieces are attached to some fancy finger gloves. It took me a while to make them fitting to my fingers. The claws were then glued on with instant glue and got some nice additional weathering. I was afraid that the claws would turn out too bulky, but I think they look super nice and I can still move my fingers pretty well. The best way to make shoes or boots for cosplay is to buy some and modify them. These ones had the perfect shape and nearly the perfect color. I sanded the whole shoes to get rid of the shine and also did some weathering in general to make them look worn. Because we had a very tough time schedule, we sent some of our 3D files to Shizu Cosplay. They printed and sanded the shoe armor for us. So I just had to make sure they got a nice paint job. For the leather bands with all the ornaments, we decided to use foam and engrave the pattern. I sealed the foam with some coats of Plastidip and painted it with different brown and red colors to make it look like leather. Good old hot glue keeps everything together. I also added a bit more weathering to the armor parts. I went on painting the knee armor with gloss black and Alclad chrome. And printed these little buttons which are decorating the pants of the queen. I could have added random round rivet heads, but on the original reference there are little suns on these button things. And here we have the finished boots, knee armor and pants. Our friend Nelly visited us in our workshop for a few days and helped me to attach the chains to my arms. Also, she is super talented at sewing, so she also helped me with the skirt. All I had to do was to add a bit of weathering. The skirt has a lot of these ornamental leather bands, which we engraved and cut with our laser cutter. With the help of my cat Bob, Nelly added all the hand stitches. And the skirt was slowly coming together. The biggest armor parts were the hip plates. They also first got a gloss black coat and then it was time for the Alclad chrome. I'm obsessed with this chrome, it's so shiny and so easy to apply. I went over the whole thing with black acrylic color to give all the details more depth. We printed the breastplate with our Zortrex M200. We had to separate it in 4 parts, glued them together, and I spent a lot of time sanding and filling everything. To save some time and to get rid of all the printing layers on the fine ornaments, I coated the whole thing with a thin layer of epoxy resin. I usually don't like this method, but we were really running out of time. After some more sanding, the breastplate got its last coat of filler. Because the ABS print is not very durable, we decided to mold it and make a more durable but also slightly flexible cast. I made a simple brush-on mold with an epoxy shell. The mold turned out pretty good, so I could start filling it with resin. I'm using a semi-rigid resin, which I tinted black just because black is always a good base color for metallic paint. I used a brush to make sure the resin gets in all the details. For the ornaments, I used the same chrome color as before and did the red parts with normal acrylic paint. I used a brush to get kind of an uneven pattern. To make the stencil for the boobs really took me a while, but I forgot to film the process, so I'm just happy that everything turned out so well. The ribcage is what makes the whole breastplate design so unique. It was also 3D printed, glued together, cleaned up, sanded and also coated with epoxy resin for a smooth finish. For painting, it's the same procedure I did for the other armor parts. Shizu Cosplay also printed and sanded some more armor parts for us, and my job was to paint everything. After the last armor parts were done, I did all the attachments and the Queen cosplay was ready. And not only the costume needs to be perfect, also the makeup. So our friend Laserlis made these amazing nose prosthetics for me. To bring the main character Silver to life, we teamed up with our good friend Sophia, aka Mrs. Skunk. She did the whole tunic. The fancy pants were made by our employee of the month, Nelly, aka Zwillingsnadel Cosplay. When the girls were ready with sewing, it was my job to destroy their work and do the weathering. I also made these clasp things and added them to the tunic. The gloves were made out of foam, which is perfect to imitate leather. The parts for the belt were 3D printed with resin, sanded, primed and then painted silver. I sewed them onto a fabric strap to make sure they all have the same spacing while wearing it. And of course, I also did some weathering. To make the belt light up, we used a semi-transparent tube and added animated LEDs. And then the belt was also done. The shoes were made by Stellar Costumes. She did an amazing job with all the stitching. All I had to do was, again, add a little bit of weathering. They are gorgeous, definitely the most fancy part of the costume. Both costumes took us about 5 weeks to finish, and I'm honest, we had some panic moments where we thought we couldn't finish everything in time. But in the end, everything turned out perfect and I feel super epic when I wear my Queen cosplay. So, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and the game was just released, so if you're curious you can just check out the link in the video description. And now I present you Silver and Queen Hadriana from the last Oricru.